Okay, so I just recently won my first draft, Swiss draft, on Magic Online, and I was telling my friend about it, and he's familiar with the game, I think, but he has never played it. And I told him I could maybe record it so he could, see what it was about. And he actually said he was interested, so I was surprised. So since he doesn't really know the game, I'm going to explain the basics of it as quickly as I can, so you can kind of think of this as sort of a uh, an intro video to playing Magic. Um, so this is Magic Online right here. What you see in front of you. This is the game board, if you will. It's a card game. It's a tabletop game, so that's kind of why it's set up in this way. Um, Over here on the left-hand side are the two people that are playing. And I think always when you play online, you're the bottom person. So this is me here. I'm Pelt Collector. I don't know why I thought of that name, but that's the name I chose for myself. Um, and this is your life total. So I'm starting with 20 life. My opponent is right here. His or her starting life total is 20 as well. We haven't started playing yet. The clock here is at 0 because we haven't started playing. So once we start playing, it will be set to 25 minutes. So we each have 25 minutes on our clock. And it's kind of like chess when you have timed chess matches, that while it's my turn, the clock is running. And while it's my opponent's turn, my clock is stopped. And if you run out of time, you lose. I, I think you just lose that I don't know, that game. I guess, yeah, I guess you would lose the game. So you don't want to run out of time. That's always a bad thing. The numbers you see beside the timer, this is your deck here. This is the size of your deck, which is, in this case, my opponent has 40 cards in his deck. Um, this is called your library. So the deck that you construct is your library. Now, I guess I should say that the format that I'm playing here is called draft, where I guess I said that already, didn't I? um, and the way this works is you open three different packs of cards, and when you open a pack, you choose one card out of it, you pass it to the player to your left or right, and of course they have this digitally seated around a table, and basically you end up seeing every pack twice because there's 8 people, there's 15 cards. I think you see every pack twice or just about twice. And so you pick one, you pass it to the player to your left or right, depending on which round of the draft you're in. And You put a deck together based on that. So you end up getting 45 cards altogether. You add lands to the deck that you construct. So out of the 45 cards, you typically pick about 23 of those to put in your deck, and then you add 17 land. And you have to have a minimum of 40 cards altogether. You don't have to add 17 land, but that's a highly recommended number because that gives you about 43% of your cards being land, which I guess is a good percentage to have. You don't want to have too many or not enough. We'll get into that later. So he has 40. I also went with 40. You can have more. You can go with more than 40, but typically you don't want to do that because if you have a whole bunch of cards in there, you won't get to your good cards that you need while you're playing. So you want to have the minimum amount basically so that you're more likely to get to your best cards as soon as possible. The number next to that is the hand size. So my opponent has no cards in his hand. I have no cards in my hand because we haven't started yet. But as we have cards, as we draw cards, this number will change and reflect how many cards each of us have in our hands, which is important information. Below the live total, we have some things down here. The tombstone looking thing is the graveyard. So when a creature dies, the card is placed in the graveyard. And there are effects in the game based on the graveyard. You'll see that in this match actually. This is the exile zone. So sometimes cards go to the graveyard, sometimes they get exiled from the game, which basically means they're just removed from the game. The graveyard is not removed from the game. That's still part of the game board, but exiled means it's just out of the game, out of play. The eyeball looking thing is the reveal zone. So sometimes you have to reveal a card to your opponent. You might have a spell that says reveal the top 4 cards of your library. That's where that would show up on here. So you click on that and it'll show you what cards have been revealed. And this is the effects zone, which I have to say I don't really think I ever bothered to look at. So I don't know if that's a problem. I've never really seen anything there. So I haven't really used that. So that's what that information is about. When I first started playing Magic, not online, but like with other people, I didn't really pay attention to some of these things. I didn't really think about, well, should I be aware of my opponent's hand size? How many cards do they have in the graveyard? So this kind of lets you know these are some, important numbers that you might need to know about when you're making decisions about what to do. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and replay this match so you can see. I'll go kind of slow at first, and then maybe I'll let it kind of play a little more quickly after that once you kind of get the hang of what's going on. So to decide who goes first, you roll a dice. So a virtual digital dice has been rolled. I lost that dice roll. And so my opponent gets to decide if they want to play first or not. Now you might think, well, wouldn't you always want to play first? Wouldn't that give you the advantage? Well, to kind of counterbalance that, to kind of make things more equal, if you get to go first, that's great because you're being more aggressive. You get to play cards first, and usually you get your creatures out first and things like that. The downside, though, is that you don't get to draw a card on your first turn. If you do not play first, if you're the one that plays second, you do get to draw a card on your first turn. And so the trade-off there is if you decide you don't want to go first, is that you will get to draw a card on your first turn, and so you have one extra card to start off with, basically, than your opponent has. So that's a decision you have to make. Do I want to play first and be more aggressive and get my creatures out first? Or do I want to play second and be able to draw on my first turn so I have some extra cards to work with? So that's something that he'll have to decide because he won the dice roll. And I believe he decides he wants to go first. I think it'll say that here. So yeah, I think it showed down here that he wanted to play first. So turn one, my opponent gets to go first. So we just drew our cards. You to start the game, you draw 7 cards. So here are the 7 cards that I drew from my library. My opponent now has 7 cards as well. He gets to decide if he wants to keep those cards, because sometimes you draw your first 7 cards and it doesn't look like there's much you can do with them, and you want to be able to do something relatively soon, like within your first 2 or 3 turns. And if you get cards that are showing that you're not going to be able to do anything, you might want to put them back and redraw. The penalty for doing that, though, is that you can only draw up to 6, though. So this is called a mulligan. He can mulligan those cards, put them back, but then he only draws up to 6 cards after that. And he can mulligan again after that. So he can look at the 6, decide that's not good, mulligan again, but then he goes down to 5 cards. So you lose cards when you do that. And so you have to kind of decide, can I work with this? Or, I don't know, it's kind of a tough decision sometimes. And then I get to make that decision. So he has to make the decision first. And sometimes I might decide what to do based on what he does. So he or she. If he decides to mulligan, maybe I would also mulligan as well, because that way he's not going to have more cards than me. So if he doesn't mulligan and I do, then I end up with less cards. So he decides not to mulligan, so he must be happy with the cards he has. Now it's giving me the option to decide if I want to mulligan, and I'm going to go ahead and keep this, even though I only have 2 land. That's workable. I mean, at least for me, ideally, I like to have 3 land to start off with. It'd be nice to see 3 in my hand, but I am on the draw. So he's playing first, which means I actually get to draw on my first turn. So that makes me feel more hopeful that I will grab that 3rd land that I need before I can really start doing things here. So the way the game works is you play lands to cast spells. So having lands out there, that's also called mana. You use that to cast your spells. And if you look at the cards I have in my hand right now, you can see, for example, like this guy, Crippling Chill, the cost for casting this spell is this. So it costs actually 3 mana altogether. There's a 2 there, but also a blue mana symbol next to it. So it costs 3 mana altogether to cast this spell. The blue mana says that I have to have a blue land for this, and then the 2 tells me I can use 2 of any other color that I want. So 3 altogether, 1 has to be blue, 2 can be any color. It can be another blue or any other color. There are 5 colors in Magic. There's blue, black, green, red, and white. This particular deck that I put together, I believe, is blue, black, and green. It's composed of blue, black, and green spells, and so I need to have blue, black, and green mana to be able to cast those. So another concern I have at the moment is I only have blue and I have black. This island here is called a basic land. It doesn't do anything special. This one is a special land that I picked up as part of the draft from the packs that we opened. It has a sort of a pro and a con. The con is that it comes into the battlefield tapped, meaning I can't use it when I first put it out on the battlefield. So when I play this land to begin with, it's unusable. But I do gain a life from it. So I get to gain 1 life. And also I can tap it for either color, blue or black. So I do have a source of black mana here, and I have a source of blue mana, but I don't have a source of green. Which isn't really a problem at the moment because I don't even have any green spells. So that isn't a problem yet, but I do hope that eventually I do get a green land to play as well, because eventually I'll be getting green spells, and I want to be able to cast those too. This spell here is an instant, which means I can basically cast it at any time. I can cast it during my turn, cast it during my opponent's turn. Other spells have to be cast only on your turn, only at certain parts of your turn as well. So if you look here, we have these are the different phases of each turn. So every time a player takes a turn, these are the phases that they have to go through. They untap cards that are tapped. We'll talk about that later. Upkeep is, has to do with certain cards having certain requirements, so you have to acknowledge those at this point. Then you get to draw a card. Then you go into what's called the main phase. That's where you can cast any other spell, creature spells, sorceries, things like that. Once you do that, then you can initiate combat if you want to attack. You could go ahead and do that at this point. You declare your attack. Your opponent declares their blockers. Damage is assigned. Combat is over. And then you go into your second main phase, where you can again cast other creatures. You can cast other sorceries. And then your turn's over, and then it goes to your opponent's turn, and they go through the same phases. So this could be cast at any time during my turn or during my opponent's turn. This is a creature, which is also considered a spell. So one thing that I had a little trouble adjusting to is I think of this as a spell, being able to cast it whenever I want, and it has some effect. I think of spells as having effects, but creatures are spells as well. So when you want to bring a creature onto the battlefield, you're casting them as a spell onto the battlefield, kind of like Final Fantasy. So I know my buddies played Final Fantasy, and you remember summoning, where you could summon Shiva or whatever. That's kind of what this is, right? We're summoning a creature to do battle for us. So it's also considered a spell and takes mana to cast. All right, so I have these creature spells. So some of these creatures, have special abilities. Actually, all of mine do, but there are some that don't have any special abilities. This guy has the special ability that he can't be blocked. So even if my opponent has creatures out on the battlefield, he can't block this guy. So if I attack with this guy, he cannot be blocked. He will always do 3 damage to my opponent. There are other ways to kill him, but he can't be killed by being blocked. Another special ability that is special to this particular set, which is Khans of Tarkir, is that I can cast this as a morph, which means I can cast it face down. So you would see the back of the card, and you'll see me do this later on. I can cast it for 3 mana of any color. So this 3 here means whatever colors you want to use, you can cast it as a face down card for 3 mana, and it functions as a 2/2 creature. The 2 numbers here indicate the power of the creature and the toughness of the creature. So it's like attacking power and defense. So it can attack for 2, and it can absorb 2 damage. It really can absorb 2 damage. It dies at 2 damage. If 2 damage is dealt to it, it dies. After I cast it face down, I can later turn it face up for this cost. So I cast it face down for 3 mana of any color, but then later on I can turn it face up for 2 of any color and a blue. So 3 mana altogether. Turn it face up, and then it becomes a 3/2 that can't be blocked. So while it's face down, it can be blocked, but when it gets turned face up, it cannot be blocked. So that's how that card works. I have this guy here. He's kind of a special guy. He is also a 3/2. His special ability is that if I have a creature that dies, and it has to be a non-token creature, which I don't have to worry about in this deck because I don't have any token generators, but whenever I have a creature that dies, I get to draw a card, which is actually a very nice ability because it's good to keep cards in your hand, and you can really quickly run out. I could end up playing all my cards by turn 5 or 6, and then I have no cards in my hand, and then it becomes a very slow game because then you're just drawing 1 card per turn, and not being able to do very much on each turn. So you want to have cards in your hand. You want to have options, and so this allows you to keep cards in your hand. So if you have a creature that dies, you get more options in your hand. I can also cast this guy as a morph, so I can cast him face down for 3 of any color, and I can turn him face up for just 1 black, which is kind of nice. Again, while he's face down, he doesn't have a special ability. This guy has Death Touch, so his special ability is Death Touch, which is basically any damage he does to a creature automatically will kill it. Doesn't matter if the power of his attack is enough to overcome the creature's toughness. If it does any, so like this guy has a power of 3, even if he's attacking a creature with a power of 10, it would still kill it because it has Death Touch. So Death Touch just kills anything that it does damage to, regardless of the power or the toughness of the creature you're attacking. This one has a special mechanic called Delve. So notice that the cost for casting this spell is 8. It's 7 of any color and a black, and which is really a very steep cost. So most of your spells are going to be 3 to 6, somewhere in there. Some of them will be a little bit less, some of them are sometimes a little bit more, but 8 usually is really a lot, and usually for that high of a cost you want to get something good out of it, and this guy's okay. I mean, the Death Touch is nice, and he has a pretty high toughness, but for 8 mana, that stat really isn't all that great for 8 mana. But the Delve mechanic allows you to cast, to pay the cost for casting the spell by exiling cards from your graveyard. So again, they would go from your graveyard to the exile zone, which means they're removed from the game, basically. So I can take any cards I have in my graveyard to help pay for this, but then they're gone out of the game. And so that's what they intend for you to do. It's probably really rare that anybody actually pays 8 land in order to cast this. They're going to be using their graveyard to cast it. Let's see, what else do I have? Okay, Swarm of Bloodflies. He has a special ability. He enters the battlefield. He's a 0/0, which means he would actually normally just be dead right away, because once you get down to 0 toughness, you're dead. But he gets 2 1/1 counters, which means he gets bumped up to being a 2/2. And anytime a creature dies, whether it's my creature or an opponent's creature, it gets another 1/1 counter. So it becomes more powerful as creatures die. So if I have a creature that dies, it becomes a 3/3. And if my opponent has a creature that dies, it becomes a 4/4, for example. So that's what I'm working with in my opening hand. Oh, I didn't talk about this. Crippling Chill, it taps a creature. So the way tapping works is whenever you use a creature to attack, it becomes tapped, and then it can't do anything until it becomes untapped. Now, normally you get to untap your creatures at the beginning of your turn, but this spell makes that creature stay tapped for an additional turn, so it can't be used. Basically, it takes a creature out of commission for 2 turns. The turn that it's cast on it, and then the next turn also it's tapped and can't do anything. And it allows me to draw a card, which is a nice extra bonus. All right. Anyway, so the way the turn works is, so let's see. So it's my opponent's turn first. It's his first main phase. You can only play 1 land per turn. So I'm expecting him to play a land. You can play it during your first main phase or your second. Sometimes people wait till the second one, but I don't know. I'm afraid to do that because I'm afraid I'll forget. So I usually play it on the first main phase. My opponent does as well. He plays an island. He plays a land, which is an island. And he can cast spells at this point, but with only 1 mana, it's unlikely that he can cast a spell. There are some spells that only cost 1 mana, but they're usually not much to worry about. It goes to the combat phase, even though he doesn't have any creatures to attack with, and because of that, it kind of skips through everything, and now it's the end of his turn. And at each phase, phase of his turn, I'm given priority to also to do things. So if I want to cast this instant, for example, I could cast it during his draw step, well, maybe not during his draw step, but during his main phase. And anytime he casts a spell, I'm given priority to respond to that. So basically, for every aspect of his turn, I'm given a chance to respond to whatever he's doing, or to just do something myself, and then he's given a chance to respond to what I'm doing. So I have to acknowledge at every phase of his step, okay, that I don't have a response to what he's doing, which I obviously can't at this point anyways, because I don't have any land to cast any spells. All right, so now it's my turn. Again, upkeep. I get to draw a card. I'm really happy to see that I get a green right away, so that's really lucky for me because now I have all three colors that I might possibly need to cast my spells. I'm going to need more land to cast some of these spells as well because like this guy, for example, takes 5. I only have 3, so I definitely want to get more land. But I have all three of my colors, which is good because it's very common to get stalled out because not because you don't have enough land, but because you don't have the right color. Maybe it's not that common, but it does happen. So main phase, I'm going to play a land. I'm going to go and play this one because I can't use it my first turn anyways. I have nothing to cast, and it comes into the battlefield tapped, which means it can't be used. So when it gets tapped, it can't be used. But I do gain a life off of that, so that's nice. And then that's the end of my turn. And so my opponent's going to play a land. I'll try to zip through this a little more quickly. He has no spells to cast. I draw another land, which is, good. Now I have 4 land altogether, 3 in my hand, 1 on the battlefield, which is good, but you don't want to get too much either. If I keep drawing land, and I don't get enough other kind of spells, I won't have any responses or any options to deal with my opponent. So you want to have a good mix. You want to have, a mix of land, but a mix of spells as well. So I don't want to keep drawing land, from here on out. I want to get some other kind of spells as well from my library. So now I play the green because now I have every color out there. I have blue, black, and green out there. And again, I don't have any spells that cost 2, so I can't do anything. So I pass my turn over, and I defer to my opponent, who now has 3 mana, and now he can cast a spell. So he casts one of these morphs. And again, the crazy thing about morphs is that it's going to function as a 2/2 creature, but it's really something else, and he can flip it over if he can pay the cost at some point. So I don't know what that creature actually is, and he may flip it over, and it could be a really scary creature at some point. But for the moment, I don't really have to worry about it because he probably can't flip it over for a while. All right, so I finally draw another creature, which is good. So I got a lot of creatures, which is good to have. So I'm going to cast a spell. I end up casting. I have to decide what to cast. I cast a morph as well. I cast the Grim Haruspex. One thing I kind of don't like is that guy was a foil card, which is sort of a special card when you get a foil card. And when I cast it as a morph, it is a foil-looking morph. And the problem with that is that there's not a whole lot of foil cards. You don't usually get a lot of foil cards when you open packs. And so chances are this is the only foil card in my deck. And once my opponent finds out what this card is, he'll know next time he sees a foil morph, it's going to be that card. So I lose the secrecy because it's showing it as a foil. At least it's showing it to me as a foil. I don't know if it does it to, if my opponent sees it as a foil. But anyways, okay, so now he's going to attack me. So here he's attacking. He puts the card forward, and when you attack with a creature, it gets tapped. I should have also mentioned that you see this little spiral around my card right here? That's to indicate that it has summoning sickness, which means that when you first cast a creature, you cannot attack with it. You have to wait a turn before you can attack. That's why he didn't attack me on the last turn when he first cast that guy. It had summoning sickness. He can block with it, but he can't attack with it. All right, so my guy can't attack, but I could block. Blocking, if he doesn't have any tricks up his sleeve, if I block this guy, they would both die because he's attacking with 2. My guy's toughness is 2, and so that's enough to kill it. And vice versa. My guy would be doing 2 damage to his guy, which has 2 toughness, and it would kill his guy as well. But he could have some trick up his sleeve because he does have some mana out here, and he could cast a spell. And in fact, you'll see later on that he does have a couple tricks up his sleeve that he uses later. So I'm really glad I didn't block here because he probably would have killed my guy. And so not only killed my guy, he would kill my guy anyways, but he would have saved his guy. So if I would have blocked it, he would have killed my guy and saved his guy, and you don't want that to happen. So I don't block. It's only 2 damage. It's early in the game. I'm not too worried about it. And then I'm thinking maybe if he doesn't cast a creature, I could swing back at him and do 2 damage to him, but in fact, he does have another creature. It's another morph. Again, so I don't know what that creature is either. I draw another land, which is okay because I'm at 5, and that's good. I can cast anything in my hand at this point, except for this guy. But eventually I'll be able to cast him when I get some cards in my graveyard. So I play another land. I decide not to attack. I'm going to cast another creature. So I cast the other morph that I have, just like he did, or she. Again, I don't know. I'm just assuming most people that play this game are male. So, and I decide not to attack because again, if I can attack with this guy, he has summoning sickness. And if I attack with this guy, he could block it. He may not. He may want to save his guy because he doesn't have enough mana to do a trick now. 1 green mana probably isn't gonna. I don't think there's any spells that would that he could use that would sort of kill my guy while saving his guy. So if I attacked, he could block, but it would kill both of our guys, and so I could call his bluff. It's sort of it's kind of like poker a little bit, where I have to decide: do I think my opponent's willing to block? I don't want to lose my creature, but is my opponent willing to lose his? If my opponent's not willing to lose his, then I could go ahead and attack safely, and he won't block because he doesn't want to lose his guy either. But I didn't want to take the chance because maybe he doesn't care about that guy, and maybe he would block, and I would lose that creature, which I'd like to save and try to use his ability later. Now I could flip this guy face up because it only costs 1 black. I do have 1 black, but I kind of want to keep him a secret. I don't want my opponent to know what he does because I think when people see that I can draw a card when my creatures die, they don't like that and they try to kill it right away. So he attacks with both of his guys. Now I'm about to take 4 damage, right? 2 from this guy, 2 from this guy. That's kind of a significant amount of damage. So I have to decide if I want to block. Again, he might have some tricks up his sleeve so that my creature might die and his creature might live. So again, I decide not to attack. Again, I'm down to 15, which is okay. I'm not too worried about that yet. And I'm maybe hoping he doesn't have another creature, but he does. So he has another blocker here. So here's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to cast another land. I guess you don't cast land. I'm going to play another land. And what I'm going to do is cast the Crippling Chill to tap this guy so he can't block. Because once it gets tapped, you can't block with it. And it'll stay tapped on his next turn, so I don't have to worry about it attacking me on his next turn either. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. And plus I get to draw a card. So I'm hoping I could draw something good that I can use possibly. And I draw another card that allows me to draw more cards. And I don't know. Again, I'm sort of a new player. I don't really like these draw cards. I usually don't play them. Like the Treasure Cruise or whatever. There's another one that lets you draw 3 cards that a lot of people like. I usually don't end up playing that. But this card saved me this game. So I think I'm really starting to understand why these draw cards are really helpful, and you'll see later how it saves me. So now he can't block with anybody, so I'm going to get in for 4 damage now. All right, and so that's the damage there. But now I have nobody to block with, right? So I had to tap these creatures in order to attack with them, and now they can't block. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and cast this guy, who is a 2/2, but he has Death Touch. And so a lot of people are kind of afraid to attack this guy because, again, he'll kill anything because he has Death Touch. Even if he doesn't have enough attack power to normally kill it, the Death Touch automatically kills it. And so I'm going to get that guy out there to block with. All right. And maybe he might still attack because, if he attacks, this guy will die anyways. But a lot of times the Death Touch kind of scares people off. I don't know. We'll see. So he ends up not attacking with both guys. So that I find that interesting because he obviously doesn't want this guy to die. There must be something special about that guy. He must want to use it in some other way. But he's willing to take a risk with this one this time. So I can decide to block it, and it'll die. Even if he has a combat trick, it most likely will still die. But I decide I'd rather hold on to my creature. So it's only 2 damage. I was able to scare him off from attacking with both of his guys. I'm willing to take 2 damage, and I'd like to hold on to my creatures. So again, I draw another card. I play the remaining land that I have in my hand. I gain a life off of that, so that's also nice. And then I have to decide what to do here. So I think what I decide to do is unmorph this guy. I'm going to flip him up, face up, so he can't be blocked. So even though he left a guy up here to block with, he won't be able to block it because this guy has that special ability. And so I can go ahead and hit him for 3. And I'm going to, again, because he held that guy back, he obviously doesn't want it to die. So I don't think he's going to block with it because he can't block this guy. And if he tried to block this guy, it would automatically die because of the Death Touch. So I don't think he's going to block it if I attack with that guy too. So that's what I end up doing. I attack with both. This one can't be blocked. I don't think he's willing to let that guy die. And so I'm going to end up getting him for 5. But then I get nervous here because he taps a land, which means he's going to do something. And I'm like, oh gosh, what does he have? Is he going to do something to kill one of my guys? And strangely enough, he goes ahead and unmorphs this guy. He flips it face up. And so now I can see what creature it actually was. It's this guy, Misfire Weaver. He has flying. So the thing with flying is that I can't block it unless I have another creature with flying or this other ability called reach, so I can reach the creatures that are flying. And I don't have anything like that on the field yet, but I'm not too worried because I do have this guy who has flying as well. So notice he has flying. He can block this guy with flying. And this one, when it gets turned face up, another creature that he controls gains hexproof. Hexproof is another special ability, which means I cannot cast a spell on that creature. Hexproof means that it can't be hexed by any of my spells, but only until the end of the turn. So that's, he kind of wasted it because obviously I don't have any mana to cast a spell to target his creature. So that's not why he turned it face up. He wasn't doing it for protection. He was doing it to get the flyer up there. So, and the reason he's doing that is because he wants to get that card face up, so he has a flyer because he knows I can't block a flyer, at least with the creatures I have right now. And he wants to spend that mana now before it's his turn again, because he spends the mana now, and then when it's his turn, the mana gets flipped face up again, not face up, it gets flipped upright, and he can use the mana again for something else. Whereas if he waits for his turn, he has to use the mana, and he can't use it for another spell. All right. So he doesn't block, which is what I expected. And so I do 5 damage, which is pretty significant. He's got to worry about. He's got to do something about that. Now, I leave myself a little bit open here, though, right? Because now I only left one blocker. He can attack with all 3 of these guys, which I think is what he ends up doing. And I have to decide: am I willing to lose this guy to prevent him from doing damage to me? And I think I decide not to. And again, and I find that interesting. Like earlier, he attacked with that guy. He didn't seem to care if it was going to die. This time he holds it back. I don't know why. So he only attacks with, maybe he holds it back because he needs a blocker and he doesn't care if that guy dies. That's probably why. So let's see. Or maybe not. I don't know. Let's see what he ends up doing. Okay, so he has a combat trick. So I'm glad I didn't block because I could have blocked thinking, okay, these 2 guys will die. But he had a trick up his sleeve, and here's his trick. Awaken the Bear, which gives his creature, the one he's targeting here, this guy right here, +3/+3. So instead of being a 2/2, it's now going to be a 5/5. And it also, so if I would have blocked, it would have killed my guy, and his guy wouldn't have died because his toughness would then be 5, and my attacking power is only 2. So I would have died, he would have been fine. Not only that, it gets trample, which means that, normally if I block and my creature dies, he still doesn't do any damage to me, even if his creature was a 10/10 and mine was only a 1/1. It wouldn't damage me if I blocked it, unless it has trample. Trample means that any extra damage that goes above and beyond killing your creature still damages you. So even if I had blocked this guy with this guy here, he still would have done 3 damage to me because he would be a 5/5. So he's doing 5 damage altogether. 2 of them would have been used to kill my creature, and 3 of them would have gone through and hit me. So trample means damage goes through your creature and hits you as well. So I still would have taken 3 damage even if I would have blocked, and my creature would have died. So I'm glad I didn't block. But now I'm a little bit worried because, that combat trick, now he hit me, instead of hitting me for 5 like I might have expected, he hit me for 8. And now I'm down to 6, which is kind of scary, And in fact, not only scary because, it's kind of a low life total, but he has enough power on the board right now to kill me if I don't block something. All right. So it's my turn. I draw. I get another land. Not exactly the most helpful thing in this situation. I have, plenty. So I have to decide what to do here. So let's see what I end up doing. I think, okay, I cast the fly for 5. So that I have a creature that can block his flyer. Right, so I think, it's kind of a weak flyer. I mean, 3 damage will kill my guy because he only has 2 toughness. But my guy will kill his guy because my guy has 2 attacking power. His guy only has a 1 defense. So I think, well, if I'm hoping that discourages him from attacking, but if he does decide to attack, we'll both die. I'll block it, and his guy will die, my guy will die, and at least I get that threat off the board because I'm down to 6. He hits me twice with this guy, and I'm dead. So I have that blocker up there, and then I go ahead and attack, which this proves to be pretty critical here. I go ahead and attack with the one guy that can't be blocked, right? Because he has 3 creatures. I have 3 that I'm going to leave up for blocking. So I can block with this guy, I can block with this guy, I can block with this guy. So I'm hoping that I can just stop him from doing any damage to me. But I can still attack with one of them and still have enough creatures to block all of his guys. All right, so that's what I end up deciding to do. He's down to 8, which he should start to worry a little bit about that. But he definitely does have the upper hand here because now he's attacking and I'm the one with the lower life total. And so I'm thinking maybe he'll leave one back for blocking because he is down to 8 and I have more creatures. But he takes an aggressive approach, which worries me. And I think, well, what should I do? Because he's leaving himself open. Now, he might still cast another creature, but he's basically not going to have any blockers from these three. So if I leave, now I have to block something because if I don't, I'm dead, right? He has 3, 2, and 2. He's going to do 7 damage to me as it is. And I only have 6 life. So I got to block something. But maybe I just block one thing, take 5 damage instead of 7. I still have 1 life left, and then I can swing back at him with all of my guys and maybe kill him, right? But then I think, well, but he knows that I could do that, and yet he's still attacking with all of his creatures, so he must have some trick up his sleeve. So I can't leave anybody open. So I decide I'm going to block with everybody. Block all of his guys so that, as it is, he can't do any damage to me at the moment. And then guess what he has? He has another Awaken the Bear, which I'm really surprised to see. I wouldn't have expected him to have 2 of those in his deck, not to mention in his hand. And so again, his guy that he's targeting here is going to get +3/+3, so it's going to become a 6/4, and it gets trample, which means that damage is still going to hit me. So if I wouldn't have blocked it at all, he would have hit me for 6, and I would have been dead right away. Not only that, it saves this guy because now his toughness is 4, my guy's attack power is only 2, and so my guy's going to die, his guy doesn't die. And because my toughness is only 2, and he's attacking for 6, and he has trample, right? So he's going to hit this. He's going to hit my creature for 2, and the remaining 4 of his power is going to hit me directly because of the trample. Normally it wouldn't, but because of trample, it does. All right, so let's go ahead and see that happen. All right, so he hit me for 4, so now I'm down to 2, which is really, really scary. Now that fly, the blood flies, had that ability that when a creature dies, it gets a 1/1 counter, which that ability is still activated even though it died. So these 1/1 counters are basically nothing. I mean, again, this is how great this creature actually would be if it was still alive, because 4 creatures died, it would get 4 1/1 counters, which means it would have become a 6/6, which is a pretty scary flyer. But because he died, the 1/1 counters don't have anywhere to go, and so it fizzles, basically, is what they say. All right, so, but he's open now because he had to tap the 3 mana to cast out Awaken the Bear. He has no blockers, but I only have one guy that can presumably only do 3 damage. I have nothing else that I can really do. Now, basically, he's going to win here because now this guy's going to go back down to being a 3/1, but that's still enough to kill me, and it's a flyer, so I can't block him. I need another flyer to block him, or I need to kill him this turn. So that's the situation I'm in. And I end up drawing this guy who is awesome at the beginning of the game. So if I had this guy at the beginning, this guy would have been great because he has a very low cost to cast, right? Just 1 black, and he's out on the battlefield. He does 2 damage, so he can start doing damage right away. And he has this ability that if he dies, if he's in the graveyard, I can bring him back from the graveyard by paying 2 mana, a 1 and a black. And so what you'll commonly see people do is they'll attack with him, he dies, they bring him right back because you attacked, and so you can use that ability, and you just bring him right back to the battlefield. Not really helpful in this case because, again, if I cast him to the field, he has summoning sickness. I can't attack with him this turn. I have to wait till next turn to even attack with him, and I'm going to die next turn from this flyer. So the only option I have here is to look for an answer using this card. So I need to draw some cards and hope that I get something that I can use, either a flyer that I can use to block his flyer, or something to kill him with. And in fact, that ends up being what happens. So I really luck out here. So I use the draw card. So it allows me to draw 2 cards. So I'm going to draw 2 cards here. And wouldn't you know it, I draw this card. The second card I draw. So I'm so lucky that I drew this, because if I didn't draw that and I didn't draw a flyer, I'm dead. This card costs 6 to cast, 5 and a green. And what it does is it gives my creature +6/+6. So if I cast it on this guy, he becomes a 9/8. So it's a crazy card, getting 6. Most people aren't expecting that. So and I can kill him, right? So if I cast him, I get +6/+6. He becomes a 9/8. I'll do 9 damage to him. He only has 8 life. He'll die. Normally it costs 6 to cast, which I wouldn't be able to afford because I had to spend 4 to even get that card, but it has Delve. So I can use my graveyard, right? So my graveyard, I have 5 cards in my graveyard. I can use those to help me cast this spell by exiling these from the game. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to use, and I really make a mistake here because he has 1 blue left. And I know that there's a card in this set that costs 1 blue that counters a spell, which means it negates my spell. It negates a non-creature spell, which is what this is. So I should have, well, here's how it works. It negates a non-creature spell unless you pay 1 mana. So I should have left 1 mana up so that if he cast that spell, I could cancel his spell by paying the 1 mana, but I didn't do that. So that was really risky of me. So I go ahead and attack. And then I wait for him to declare blockers. He doesn't have any. So now I'm going to cast this Become Immense. And I should have left the 1 mana up and used 4 of my graveyard cards to pay the rest of it. But I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I was just excited that I might actually win here. And then he becomes a 9/8, and I win. So that was a really lucky victory there. And a very, very close game. He ends up winning the next game, and I think it was kind of like this game. It was really close. We were kind of knocking each other down. I think he had 5 life. I had like 6 or 7 life or something like that. And then he cast the spell where he gains 10 life, which I didn't expect him to play because I never really see anybody play this card. And so he was back up to 15, and then so I was in some trouble at that point. I ended up losing. I wasn't able to bring him back down. But then I ended up winning the last game, and so maybe I'll record that one as well. But that's an introduction to Magic Online and some of the cards and what they do and just kind of how the game works. I'm sorry it took me so long to do the commentary for this game, which really only took, let's see, 7 minutes off of his clock, about 6 minutes off of my clock. So it really only took 13 minutes to play, but 41 minutes to comment on. So I apologize, but all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. Hope you enjoyed watching it, and maybe I'll do some more videos later.